The floor buffer hummed against the silence of the 42nd floor, a mechanical lullaby for the invisible woman pushing it. Hattie Washington gripped the handle with calloused hands, her eyes fixed on the reflection of the rain-streaked glass in the marble. She was the ghost of vain industries, unnoticed and underestimated by the suits who walked past her every day. Tonight, however, the ghosts would have to become flesh and blood to survive. The sudden screech of metal on metal shattered the hypnotic rhythm of the cleaning machine. Hattie killed the motor instantly, her head snapping toward the executive elevator bank. That specific alarm only sounded when someone forced the heavy doors open from the inside. Silence rushed back into the hallway, heavy and thick with an unspoken threat. The steel doors were pried apart with a desperate, grinding noise. Alina Vane stumbled out into the hallway, barefoot and gasping for air. She looked nothing like the polished heiress on the magazine covers in the lobby newsstand. Her silver dress was torn at the hem, and mascara ran in dark, terrified rivets down her pale cheeks. Hattie froze, her instinct to remain unseen warring with the obvious distress before her. Rich people drama usually resulted in lawsuits or layoffs for people like her. But then Elena's wild eyes locked onto Hattie's face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated fear that cut through the social divide. Alina pushed off the wall and sprinted across the freshly polished marble. She slipped slightly on the sleek surface before correcting herself and grabbing Hattie's arm. Her grip was bruising, her fingernails digging into the blue uniform sleeve. "Please help my dad," she gasped, the words tumbling out in a choked sob. "Miss Vane?" Hattie asked, her voice steady despite the sudden chaos. "What is happening?" "They're killing him," Elena whispered, looking back at the open elevator shaft. "The security team is staging a coup." Hattie stiffened, her mind flashing to the headline, "The Billionaire's daughter begged the black janitor girl." It felt absurd, but the trembling woman holding her arm was very real. "Who is up there?" Hattie asked, her voice dropping to a serious, low register. "Kruger," Elena replied, naming the head of security. "He shot the loyal guards and has dad in the penthouse." Elena continued rapidly. "They want the encryption keys to the offshore accounts. I managed to slip out the fire exit, but they locked the stairwells. I'm trapped." A soft ding from the far end of the hall made both women jump. The service elevator arrow was lit up and moving. "They are coming," Alina whimpered, her eyes darting around the open hallway. Hattie looked at the terrified woman, then at the elevator, then at her cleaning cart. "Get in the cart," Hattie commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. "The laundry bag," she clarified, when Alina hesitated. "Get in right now." Alina scrambled into the heavy canvas rolling cart attached to the front of Hattie's station. Hattie threw a pile of dirty microfiber rags over the heiress. She topped it off with 2 half-empty bottles of bleach and a roll of trash bags. The silver dress was completely concealed beneath the smell of industrial lemon and ammonia. Hattie turned the buffer back on just as the service elevator doors slid open. 2 men stepped out, their heavy boots thudding against the floor. They were huge, wearing black tactical gear that screamed private military rather than corporate security. They held suppressed pistols at the low ready, scanning the room with lethal precision. Hattie kept the machine running, swaying with its rhythm. The men swept the room with their eyes, checking the corners and the reception desk. One of them, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, approached Hattie. He didn't look at her face, he looked through her. To him she was just furniture that moved. "You," he barked over the hum of the buffer. Hattie looked up, widening her eyes and affecting a posture of confused submission. "Sir," she asked, shouting slightly over the motor. "Did you see a girl run through here?" The man gestured impatiently with his free hand. "Silver dress, crying, running fast." Hattie stopped the machine and gestured vaguely toward the main executive elevators with a gloved hand. "I heard the big doors ding a minute ago, sir. I think the car went down," Hattie added, pointing to the floor indicator. The man tapped his earpiece and turned to his partner. "She took the main lift down to the lobby," he said into his mic. "Intercept her at the ground floor." The 2 men stepped back into the service elevator immediately. As the doors closed, Hattie saw the partner glance at her cart. The door sealed shut before his suspicion could form into action. Hattie exhaled a breath she didn't know she was holding. She killed the machine again and whispered into the canvas bag. "You can come out, but stay low." Alina emerged, shaking the dirty rags off her shoulders. "You saved me," she breathed, looking at Hattie with awe. "Not yet," Hattie said, her mind racing through the building schematics. "If they check the lobby and you aren't there, they'll be back in 3 minutes. We need to move. We need to call the police," Elena said, reaching for a desk phone. "Lines are cut," Hattie said, stopping her hand. "I tried to call my sister 10 minutes ago on the break room landline and it was dead air. They jammed the cell signals to my mobile has been searching for service since 11:30. Alina looked at her, stunned. "Who are you?" Alina asked, staring at the woman in the blue uniform. "I'm the person who knows how this building breathes," Hattie said simply. She walked over to a grey door near the restrooms labeled janitorial supply and unlocked it. "Come on," Hattie urged, pulling Alina into the small room. Inside, the smell of concentrated chemicals was overpowering. Hattie shoved a heavy shelving unit aside with surprising strength. Behind it was a small rusted access panel. "Where does that go?" Alina asked, peering into the dark hole. "HVAC maintenance crawlspace," Hattie explained, pulling a flashlight from her belt. "It runs parallel to the executive suite ventilation. It's the only way up without using the stairs or elevators," Hattie finished. "Your dad is in the penthouse." Alina nodded. "Yes, his private office. That's floor 45, Hattie calculated. "We have a long climb ahead of us." She climbed into the duct first, the metal groaning slightly. "Follow me and keep quiet." The climb was grueling and claustrophobic. The crawlspace was tight, dark, and hot. Hattie led the way, crawling on elbows and knees with practiced ease. Behind her, the billionaire's daughter struggled, her expensive manicure scraping against galvanized steel. "Why are you doing this?" Alina whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the metal tube. "You could have just hidden in the closet." Hattie paused for a second, the beam of her flashlight cutting the dust. She thought about her father, a mechanic who worked until his back gave out. He taught her that you never leave a job half done. She thought about the way Marcus Vane had actually held the elevator for her once. "Because they're in my building," Hattie grunted. "And I don't like messes," she finished, pulling herself up a vertical shaft. They climbed in silence for several minutes, the air getting hotter. Hattie could hear Elena's ragged breathing behind her. "We're almost there," Hattie encouraged. They reached the vent grate for the 45th floor. Hattie clicked off her flashlight and peered through the slats. They were looking down into the anteroom of Marcus Vane's office. 3 men stood guard with rifles. Inside the glass-walled office, Hattie could see Marcus Vane tied to a chair. A man in a sharp grey suit Kruger was leaning over him. He held a tablet in one hand and a gun in the other. "He's running out of time," Alina whispered. Hattie looked around the anteroom, assessing the threats. It was sterile and minimalist, with nowhere to hide. Then her eyes caught the fire suppression panel on the far wall. "Listen to me," Hattie whispered. "I'm going to drop down there." She told Alina, "You stay here, in the vent." "Are you crazy?" Alina hissed. "They have guns, and I have keys," Hattie said, tapping the heavy ring on her belt. "Do you know the override code for the server room cooling system?" Alina blinked in the darkness. "The what?" "No. Think," Hattie urged. "Does your dad use a specific code for systems?" "He uses my birthday for everything," Alina realized. 722. "Good," Hattie said. Hattie pointed to a digital keypad near the vent opening inside the duct. "That's the environmental control for this floor. If you punch that in, you can kill the lights. Can you do that when I signal?" Alina nodded, her jaw setting as fear hardened into resolve. "I can do it." Hattie unlatched the grate with a soft click. She waited for the thunder of the storm outside to mask the sound. She dropped into the room behind a large potted fiddle leaf fig. She landed silently, absorbing the impact in her knees. She was in G crouched low, moving behind the receptionist's marble desk. She needed a weapon, but she had none. She reached into her utility belt and bypassed the screwdriver. She pulled out a heavy spray bottle of industrial-strength degreaser. She picked up a heavy glass paperweight from the desk. She tossed the paperweight hard toward the hallway on the left. Crash! The sound of shattering glass echoed through the room. "Check it." One guard barked immediately. 2 of the guards moved toward the noise, weapons raised. Hattie signaled up to the vent with her hand. Alina punched the code into the keypad. The lights died instantly, plunging the entire floor into pitch blackness. "Contact!" A guard shouted in panic. Hattie didn't hesitate. She knew the layout of this room down to the inch. She surged forward in the dark, swinging her heavy maglite flashlight. It connected with the first guard's knee with a sickening crunch. He screamed and went down. "Flashlights!" On the remaining guard yelled. Beams of light cut through the dark, chaotic and swinging wildly. Hattie was already moving, sliding across the carpet. She reached the second guard who was spinning in circles. She sprayed the degreaser directly into his face. He howled, clawing at his burning eyes, his weapon clattering to the floor. The third guard, the one by the office door, fired blindly. Pop 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 bullets shattered the vase by Hattie's head. "Alina, the fire alarm!" Hattie screamed, toward the ceiling. Up in the vent, Alina slammed her heel into the sprinkler sensor hists. The emergency sprinklers erupted. Water cascaded down, soaking everything instantly. The floor became a slick sheet of marble and wet carpet. The door to the inner office flew open. Kruger stepped out. He dragged Marcus Vane by the collar, using him as a shield. Kruger had a flashlight mounted on his weapon, sweeping the room. Enough. Kruger roared. Come out or I blow his brains out. Hattie froze behind the receptionist's desk, water dripping from her nose. She was breathing hard, the element of surprise gone. I know you're out there, Kruger yelled over the hiss of the water. Who are you? Hattie stood up slowly, her hands raised. The beam of light hit her face, blinding her. Janitor, she said calmly. Kruger paused, stunned. A laugh barked out of him, harsh and incredulous. The cleaning lady, he scoffed. You took out 2 of my men. Floors are slippery when wet, Hattie said, her voice steady. You should have read the signs, she added. You're a nuisance, Kruger sneered, raising the gun from Marcus's head to point it at Hattie. Dad, duck. The scream came from above. Alina dropped from the open vent directly onto Kruger's shoulders. The impact buckled his knees. The gun went off into the ceiling. The bullet shattered the light fixture. Marcus Vane, seeing his chance, slammed his elbow backward. It connected with Kruger's stomach. Kruger stumbled back, slipping on the wet marble. He fell hard. His head cracked against the corner of the heavy oak desk. He didn't get up. Silence returned, save for the hissing sprinklers. Marcus Vane scrambled to his daughter. He untied his hands frantically and they embraced. It was a wet, shivering tangle of relief. Hattie slumped against the desk, the adrenaline draining out of her. She checked the guards. They were out cold. Marcus Vane stood up and walked over to Hattie. The billionaire was soaked, his lip bleeding. He looked at Hattie, really looked at her for the first time. You, Marcus said, his voice shaking. You're the one who cleans the 42nd floor, he realized. Hattie, right. Hattie nodded, wiping water from her eyes. Yes, sir, Hattie, Marcus said, and then he did something the executives never did. He extended a hand to her. Thank you. 2 weeks later, the sun was shining on Chicago. Hattie stood in the lobby of Vane Industries, not in a blue jumpsuit, but in a tailored navy blazer. She held a thick manila envelope in her hand. It was her new contract, head of facilities and operations. The elevator dinged and she stepped inside. The receptionist, who had ignored her for 3 years, looked up and stammered a greeting. Hattie smiled, pressed the button for the penthouse, and felt the car rise. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was the one holding the keys.